welcome to the next module. In this module, we will be studying about carbon cycle in the Arctic. Let us look at the different types of carbon. So types of carbon in the carbon cycle include different colors are given here. Purple, which is called as a carbon captured through the air or industrial emissions. Then we have blue, teal and green carbon. The blue carbon stored in the ocean, plants and the sediments. Teal, the carbon stored in freshwater and wetland environment. Green carbon stored in terrestrial plants. And then we have black carbon that is released through the burning of fossil fuels. Grey carbon released through the industrial emissions. Brown carbon released by incomplete combustion of organic matter. Red carbon released through biological particles on snow and ice that reduce albedo. Mainly these are basically from the anthropogenic activities. Let us look at the carbon cycle of the Arctic. See the stocks of carbon in the terrestrial and oceanic components of the Arctic. The exchange of carbon dioxide and methane between these components and the atmosphere. The transfer of carbon between land, ocean and ocean as methane, dissolved organic carbon, dissolved inorganic carbon, particulate inorganic carbon and particulate organic carbon. The exchange of methane, DOC and DAC between oceanic component of the Arctic and the adjacent Pacific and Atlantic Ocean. So these are all the various ways by which the carbon is moving in the Arctic region. So we will be looking at all these things now. So let us start with the carbon sources. We will first start with the global one, then we will move on to Arctic specific. So what are the different sources of carbon? One is the organic, another one is inorganic, synthetic and biomass. Four major categories are there. Organic include biologically derived compounds and fossil fuels. Inorganic include carbonates and carbon dioxide. Synthetic include industrial compounds which are produced by industries, mainly drugs, petroleum products, etc. Biomass include renewable energies, that is plants and animal use it for energy. So these are all the different sources of carbon, and we also have different categories. For example, we can also differentiate the carbon source using natural carbon source, fossil fuels, anthropogenic carbon source and volcanic activities. The natural carbon source include forest, ocean, soils and wetlands. The fossil fuel includes coals, oil and natural gas. Anthropogenic carbon source include agricultural practices like fertilizer use, livestock production, etc. Industrial process, manufacturing of many chemical process. Deforestation and land use changes are the main anthropogenic carbon sources. And we also have volcanic activity because volcanic eruption also produces lots of carbon dioxide. And if you look at the carbon sinks, we have 6 major categories. One is the forest. So the terrestrial forest or a boreal forest, generally they absorb carbon dioxide which is present in the atmosphere through photosynthesis. And when we talk about oceans, we have marine ecosystems and oceanic carbonate systems. The marine ecosystem mainly uses carbon dioxide for the phytoplankton, mainly the primary producers, and the carbonate system is conversion of CO2 into carbonic acid and then further to carbonate formation, that is in the coral reef or other shells that will sequester carbon or remove carbon. Then in the wetland we have marsh, swamps and peatlands. Here large quantities of carbon is present in soils and which slow down the decomposition. When we specifically look at soils, soil has organic carbon and many organic matters are present in the soil, including the one which are decomposed from the plant and animal materials. The carbon that is present in the soil can be consumed by microorganisms that is present in the soil. Then when we talk about grassland, savannas and prairies, the ecosystem can actually remove a significant amount of carbon dioxide because they will be taken up and put in the deep root systems of their soil and they can be managed sustainably. And of course, we have the last one which is very specific for the Arctic, which is called the permafrost. Permafrost is basically the frozen organic matter. Here, a lots of carbon is frozen in this particular organic matter. They may be stored in the form of carbon dioxide or methane. So when we talk about the global carbon cycle, we have sources, we have sinks, and there is a flux between source and the sink. There are 4 major sources: earth crust, oceans, atmosphere and terrestrial ecosystems. And here we see what are the types of carbon present in these 4 major carbon sources. The earth crust has sedimentary rock and fossil fuel. There is 100,000 petograms in the rocks and 400,000 petograms in fossil fuel. What is petagram? Petagram is basically it is equivalent to gigatons of carbon, as 1 petagram equals 1 billion metric tons. So this is the amount of carbon that is present. And when we look at the ocean, there are different types of carbon in the ocean which are dissolved in organic carbon, like bicarbonates and carbonates. And here we have 38,000 petagrams as DIC and 1,000 petagrams of carbon at the ocean surface. And when we look at atmosphere, methane and carbon dioxide are the two major gases of carbon, and around 750 petagrams of carbon is present as carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And when we talk about the terrestrial ecosystem, which include plants, animal, soil, microorganisms like bacteria and fungi, there are around 560 petagrams in the plants and 1500 petagrams in the soil. So if you look at the rock has the maximum amount of carbon in the earth crust. Outside of the earth crust, ocean has the maximum number of carbon. So around 38,000 petagram of carbon is present as DIC. So in the terrestrial biosphere, what are all the different forms of carbon and how they are fluxing can be seen here. So the carbon is present as a vegetation in the living biomass, or it is in the litter and soil as a dead organic matter, or it may be present in the wet soils and permafrost soils. So these are all the sources of carbon that is present in the biosphere. And how the carbon dioxide is released by the plants or soil microbial or animal respiration releases carbon dioxide, and plant respiration also releases carbon dioxide. Wildfire also releases the carbon dioxide. So these are the sources of carbon dioxide. And how the carbon dioxide is removed? This is removed by the plant photosynthesis, mainly gross primary production. This is happening during the growing season only. And what is the seasonal cycles? Of course, there is a greater land mass in northern hemisphere, and we see a characteristic sawtooth pattern which is called as a Keeling curve. So we will study about Keeling curve in the later part. What happens is, the production of carbon dioxide increases and then it decreases. So it moves like a sawtooth. So that is what is called the Keeling curve. Here is a pictorial representation of the global carbon cycle. As we have mentioned earlier, the earth crust has the maximum amount of carbon. Next to that is the ocean. So here we had seen the dissolved inorganic carbon in the ocean is the next biggest thing, around 38,000 gigatons of carbon is present. And this is actually undergoing cycle through the marine biota. And there is also surface sediments in the coast, and the rivers and lake also bring in some amount of carbon to the ocean. And atmosphere also has a carbon dioxide. Similarly, the natural resources like gas, oil and coal reserves also have carbon. And permafrost has 1400 gigatons of carbon which may also be released. So these are all the various amount of carbon, that is the global carbon cycle that is present.